Hey there, Jim Johnson for Accent Help. So I had a question from somebody about primary stress versus secondary stress and even tertiary in multi-syllabic words. So English is tends to be iambic. So like Shakespeare, it's this de-dum, 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 de-dum. Syllables tend to be every other one is stressed to some degree. And when it doesn't match up with that, like words as they tie together, don't match up with that, we'll usually do sort of contractions to reduce a couple of words to bring them together. Could be all the way to a contraction like it's or something like that. But it could even be something like and his simply becoming and is and is and is and is to kind of tie together to reduce it. So there's reduction that happens with unstressed words or unstressed syllables. So the example that this person asked about was the word conversation, which will tend to be I'm using the way roughly that I would say it, except what I've done here is I've transcribed it where every single syllable is overly stressed. And I actually just had this with an actor yesterday that I was coaching who was really wanting to stress every single word. And I was like, wait, we've got to, the word is pronounced differently if it's stressed versus if it's unstressed. So rather than reaching this unnatural, everything is stressed, how can we find a reduction in that and let it be more like conversation? Because then we can truly talk about the pronunciation of those words. In a single word, you can take certain syllables that will tend to have a reduction in the stress. So in this one, I've put dots where all the syllable breaks are in this 4-syllable word of conversation. And where the primary stress will tend to be is here on say. So you put primary stress before it, secondary stress before as well. So conversation. So this one will be reduced because it's a very unstressed syllable. So rather than this, it will tend to be a schwa rhoticity. And some people, even rhotic speakers, will sometimes drop that R and say conversation, and it doesn't even quite get to that R sound. And instead of shun, this strong version, you may get a reduction to something like a schwa, or I would say that it's even going to be very common that the vowel goes away completely and you do a little bit of a syllabic N where it's almost acting like a vowel where it's so vowels, oftentimes it seems like every syllable has to have a vowel. Well, here's an example where you don't have to have one and it can simply be shun, shun, conversation, shun, shun, shun. That reduced. Great. So that I would say is the primary thing to be aware of. What'll oftentimes happen in this secondary stress is that it's still a recognizable vowel, but the recognizability of it will be a little bit reduced. So I would very commonly want to put this little X above it, which is a diacritic that means mid-centralized. What it means, I like to think of it as schwa-ified. So you're moving towards a schwa. So rather than all the way to a full con, it's It's kind of recognizable as that, but it's reduced in a way that it's not ka, right? So that is roughly how I would transcribe the way that this is oftentimes said, recognizing second half of a diphthong is almost always shorter. There are other ways to write it. Some people prefer to write it with like that as the second half of it. It's really about, remember, IPA is a tool. So how are you going to use your tool to make it clear? So that's hopefully that answers the question that the person had about secondary stress in a multi-syllabic word like conversation. If you're interested in information for actors learning accents, check out accenthelp.com.